Chapter 82. This venerable one can't believe it. Outside the fragrance inn of Rainbow Isle stood its willowy innkeeper, all dressed up with pearl bracelets, clinking on her wrists as she leaned against the door, eating melon seeds fried in snake gall. Whenever Xuanyuan Pavilion held an auction, most of the visitors ended up staying at her place, since she was clever on top of being pretty. A flicker of those beautiful eyes, and she could easily guess what her guests desired. It was just past noon, and the sun beamed brightly overhead. The innkeeper spit out some melon seed shells. The auction would be over in another 2 hours or so. The inns on Rainbow Isle were all fairly expensive, and visiting cultivators tended not to stay, so she didn't expect to make much from rentals today. That was all right. These cultivators, heroes and whatnot, still had to eat before leaving, and she fully intended to squeeze them for dinner. She flicked some bits of fruit peel off her skirt, then turned to yell at the waiter inside. "Erfu, wipe the tables and chairs down again, and fetch a basket of the melon seeds I fried. Put a plate on every table. Gotta get ready for our guests tonight." "Alrighty, boss, right away." The waiter jogged off. Done with her sunbathing and snacking, the innkeeper grinned contentedly. She was about to head inside to supervise the work when she noticed a fast-approaching black and white silhouette at the end of the road. Once it drew closer, she saw that it was a handsome cultivator dressed in black who was holding someone in his arms. Nigh instantly, he burst into her inn at full tilt and in a burning panic. "A room! Room! The waiter gaped, maybe because the cultivator had appeared so suddenly, and because he was acting so strangely. The waiter could only stare at him in bewilderment, mouth hanging open. "I said I want a room!" Moran roared angrily. "What are you, deaf? Where's your boss?" "Are you Tianjun?" The voice of a young woman came from behind him, a little simpering and a lot apologetic. A voice at which it would be hard to stay mad. Moran turned around and came face to face with the innkeeper's agreeable smile. "My apologies for the wait. He's new. I am the innkeeper. Please feel free to come to me if you need anything." With his dark, handsome eyebrows raised, Moran hurriedly repeated, "Give me a room." The innkeeper looked him over quickly and discreetly. The cultivator was wearing a cloak, so he was probably an attendee of the Xuanyuan auction, but the hood had fallen off in his haste, revealing a handsome face that still had a trace of tender youth. That wasn't important. What was important was the brocade pouch embroidered with a giant tortoise that was tied around his wrist. It was a Jiankun pouch from Xuanyuan Pavilion, one they specifically gave to patrons to allow them to carry purchased goods. The innkeeper's eyes gleamed. The cultivator had money, lots of money. Next, she glanced at the person in his arms. He was covered in a cloak and his face was turned away, so she couldn't see what he looked like. But the innkeeper's eyes were keen as a hawk's, and they swept over the snow-white robes made of high-quality silk before zeroing in on the hand peeking out from the wide opening of his sleeve. Long and slender, porcelain-fine skin, delicate fingertips, shapely joints, a beauty. The innkeeper understood immediately. Sure, this was a beautiful man, but it wasn't like dual cultivation between men was unheard of in the cultivation world. Nothing to write home about. "Dafu, open a room!" The innkeeper wasted no time and asked no questions. Her orders were brisk as she snapped her fingers. "The best one we have!" Chu Wanning's sickness had come suddenly and without the slightest warning. It was a good thing they were in Guyuye territory, where good medicines and physicians were readily available. The sage doctor's eyes were closed as he took the pulse in Chu Wanning's wrist with lightly calloused fingertips. For a long time he didn't utter a single sound. Moran could hold it in no longer. "Doctor, how's my shizun?" "It's not a pressing issue, but—" Moran seriously couldn't stand people who talked in circles and beat around the bush. But what? He pressed, eyes wide. But it's quite strange. Your master's cultivation is remarkable. He's at a level achieved by few in this world. Yet my careful examination has revealed that his spiritual core is exceedingly fragile, even more so than that of a fledgling cultivator still in the foundation establishment stage. If cultivation was water, then spiritual core was the vessel holding that water. Where once cultivation accrued slowly over time, one's spiritual core was inborn. It was easier for someone with an innately powerful core to cultivate, but once one's cultivation reached a certain point, it would begin to bolster that core. Generally speaking, cultivation and core were interdependent and complementary. An eminent songche like Chu Wanning should naturally have an extremely robust core, so physicians generally didn't bother to check such a thing when taking his pulse. Moran was shocked. How is that possible? I thought the same. However, I checked over and over, and it was the same every time. My shizun's spiritual core is weaker than a fledgling cultivator's? How could that be? There's no way. Could you please take another look? Maybe you made a mistake somewhere. I've always been most cautious in my practice, and I've never said anything of which I'm not absolutely certain. If the young Xianjun doesn't believe me, feel free to get a second opinion. The result will be the same. Moran was stunned. The issue has arisen precisely because your master's spiritual core is so fragile. The doctor continued. He appears to have recently suffered some sort of influence from a powerful weapon, one that has some sort of resonance with him, yet does not belong to him. He experienced a rebound as a consequence of that resonance, then lost consciousness because his core couldn't withstand it. I will prescribe some medicinal decoctions. Have him take them and get plenty of rest. He will be fine. Moran saw the doctor off and came back to sit by Chu Wanning's bed, with his cheek propped up in one hand, watching him in a daze. A weak core? How was that even possible? However, while the old man couldn't possibly have known what had happened at Xuanyuan Pavilion, he had correctly surmised that Chu Wanning had encountered a powerful weapon. He likely wasn't spouting nonsense. There was also the matter of Bugui. Moran had only released a tiny bit of spiritual energy at Xuanyuan Pavilion when Chu Wanning suddenly collapsed, so he had been unable to get a chance to see if the long blade was indeed the holy weapon he had possessed in his past life. But if it was, then why had Bugui resonated with Chu Wanning? And moreover, why had it caused a rebound? Moran stared at Chu Wanning, brooding while his thoughts tied themselves into a big old knot. He didn't know how much time passed before Chu Wanning's brows scrunched up, his eyelashes quivering like he was having another nightmare. Moran reached out and gently smoothed his brow, though he had no idea what compelled him to do it. Shizun. Chu Wanning did not respond. Shizun. Chu Wanning. I've already lived 2 lifetimes, but could it be that there are still things about you that I don't know? In short order, the innkeeper finished boiling the medicine in the inn's kitchen and came upstairs to deliver it. Moran tasted it, ridiculously bitter, as expected. Chu Wanning hated bitter things. Moran sighed and called back the innkeeper, who was about to leave. Innkeep, do you have anything sweet? Hi, we make fresh sugar candies, but today's batch is all gone. I can send someone to go buy some if Xianjun would like. Moran looked at the steaming medicine and shook his head. Never mind then. The medicine will be cold by then, and it has to be taken hot to be effective. Thanks, though. No problem. Feel free to call on me if you need anything else. Having said that, the innkeeper tactfully left, closing the door on her way out. Moran carried the medicine over and set it down by the bed, then sat at the edge with one hand on his knee. He reached out with the other to help Chu Wanning up. "Shizun, it's time for your medicine." Moran had plenty of practice feeding Chu Wanning medicine from his last lifetime. He held Chu Wanning in one arm so that his shizun leaned against him, then scooped up a spoonful of the medicine with his other hand, blew to cool it, and slowly fed it to him. When he thought about it now, this was the second time since his rebirth that he had taken care of Chu Wanning. He disliked this person, yet he felt such unease whenever he got sick. He really couldn't understand it. "Bitter." Despite being unconscious, the man in his arms could taste the medicine. Chu Wanning's eyebrows pulled together, and he turned away, refusing to drink any more. Moran was used to this behavior. Holding another spoonful, he tugged Chu Wanning back around and coaxed him patiently. "One more. You'll feel better after. Here." And fed him another spoonful. Chu Wanning coughed up half of it, brow furrowing even more. "So bitter." "It's sweet. The next one will be sweet. Come, come." "The next one. Promise. It's unbelievably sweet. This venerable one sent people to find the sweetest syrup in all the land." Moran was so distracted by cajoling Chu Wanning into drinking the medicine that he forgot himself for a moment and absent-mindedly let words from his past life fall from its mouth. "It's delicious. You'll regret it if you don't open up. Come on." Just like that, he managed to sweet-talk Chu Wanning into drinking the whole bowl. After the last spoonful, Moran let out a breath and was about to get up and tidy things when there was a sudden flash of white. Before he could react, a slap landed soundly on his cheek. "You liar! Get the hell out!" Chu Wanning snapped. Then his head drooped and he went right back to sleep, leaving Moran with his mouth hanging half open, pitifully holding his cheek. He was about to get mad when the man in his arms groaned softly, like he was dreaming about something distressing, his face pale. When Moran saw him like this, he just couldn't be angry. He didn't have any candy, but his gaze landed on the Jiankun pouch sitting at the head of the bed. Struck by a sudden idea, he took out a bottle of the tapir fragrance dew. Then he tapped Chu Wanning's cheek with his hand, not too gentle, but not too hard, and let that count as revenge. "Wait here a bit. I'll go make you some sweet dew water to drink." Chu Wanning didn't respond, so Moran moved to lay him back down. But when he leaned closer in the process, he heard a low exhale and a slurred mumble. "It wronged you." Moran froze. "What?" Chu Wanning's eyes were tightly closed, and his eyelashes shivered unceasingly, as if he was enduring something excruciating. Blood drained from his face, bit by bit. He seemed to have fallen into another dream, one that was even more frightening than the last. He shook his head minutely, an uncharacteristically soulful expression appearing on his habitually impassive face. It was I." For a split second, Moran's heart stuttered erratically. A strange feeling flooded his chest, as if there was a secret right in front of him, from which he was separated by only one last layer of haze. A secret he was on the verge of unveiling. Staring fixedly at Chu Wanning, he asked quietly, "You what?" "It was I who wronged you." Moran felt suddenly disoriented. He didn't know if the dim light of the candle was making him see things, but he thought he perceived a glimmer of wetness amidst Chu Wanning's thick eyelashes. "It was I who wronged you." The words left Chu Wanning's lips as light as mist, but they hit Moran with all the force of a crashing thunder. Moran abruptly shot up from the bed and went stiff. His pupils contracted into pinpoints as he stared in disbelief at the man on the bed. Instantly, his expression changed, his heart pounding like a stampede of horses and hands clenching tightly into fists. In one moment, he felt the blood in his body catch fire, and in the next, it froze over. What did you say? After a moment of being paralyzed in shock, Moran seized Chu Wanning by the throat, his eyes flashing with danger. The guise of a guileless naivety that he had worn since rebirth vanished into thin air. Chu Wanning, what did you just say? Say it again! Say it again! It was I who wronged you. I won't blame you in life or in death. It was a curse that Moran could never forget. A nightmare that had haunted him for 2 lifetimes. How many times had he closed his eyes, only to hear these words sighed by his ear, though the speaker was long gone from the world. These were words that Chu Wanning had spoken in their past life, only as he lay dying. So why now would he? Why would he? Unless Chu Wanning had also been reborn?